Hi, I'm Ian. Welcome to this video introducing the students from the HCC nursing program to their new iPads. I hope it helps, and if you're not one of our students, you're welcome anyway. Here we are on my iPad to look at some of the icons that will help you get around. We'll start with a very simple set of buttons, the forward and back buttons. These are much like the buttons on your browser and certainly show up in Safari, which will be our first screenshot example of icons on the iPad screen. So the right-hand one pointing toward the right is to go forward, the left-hand one pointing toward the left is to go back. I have drawn them in hopefully a very simple fashion so that you can recognize them no matter what app they're drawn into. Next, we have the bookmark button, which is used in Safari and in other apps to indicate a list of frequently visited pages or files, also occasionally used to indicate that you can store something in that location. But mostly you look for this icon to allow you to pull up a list of selections you can choose from. The plus button can vary in appearance from app to app, but it almost always indicates that you can add something to the screen. That may be a web page in Safari. It might also be a new file in another app that uses multiple files. So this generally adds something to whatever activity you've got going on at the moment. The X, on the other hand, indicates that you can close or delete something from the app. So for instance, in Safari, this allows you to close a website that you're looking at without closing the whole app altogether. This clockwise arrow indicates that you can reload something. So in Safari, this reloads the web page to see if something has changed, or if it didn't load it entirely, you can try again to see if you get better results the second time. In other apps, this could indicate that you can refresh something that might have changed in the background while you were working on something else. Tabs are very handy. These are supposed to visually represent tabs that might divide cards in a card catalog or files in a drawer. So digitally, these will show you multiple things that you can choose among that are all open at once, much like we do in a browser on a PC or a laptop now. So these are horizontally displayed tabs like they will be in Safari, and you'll see these in many other apps as well. The Open In button is new with iOS as far as I know. So on our iPads, this tells us that whatever I'm looking at now, the picture, the file, the document, can be used or opened in another app on the iPad. And if I tap on this icon, then it will usually show me a list of other apps that can use this same file. So I can switch from, say, a drawing program to a writing program, or I can move something from a drawing program into email so I can send it to someone. So this generally gives the idea I'm going to take what I'm working on now and move it to another app or another location. Let's take a look at a screenshot of the mobile Safari app and see if we can spot some of these icons in its layout, to see if we can recognize this in real life. I'm going to zoom in on the upper left corner of the screen. As with newspapers and many other things that are written in English, the upper left corner of the screen is where a lot of the action starts out. So I can see right here a back button, which indicates that I've been to a previous page and I came to this page from somewhere, and if I tap on that icon I'll go back to it. There's also a forward button, which is grayed out because I haven't been anywhere else since this page, so there's nowhere else to go. But if this was in a series of pages that I'd browsed, then this would take me forward as well. Here's our bookmarking icon, so tap on that and I'll get a list of bookmarks of things I go to recently. Here is the Open In button, so I could take this web page and go somewhere else with it. I could put a bookmark on my home screen with it, or I could email this URL, this website, to someone, any of those kinds of changes. Let's see if there's anything else we recognize here. Zoom back out again. Up. There is, right here, is our reload button, so I could reload this page. And if I look a little bit below that, I will see that there are tabs. So the one I'm looking at now is an auscultation training and reference page. That'll be more interesting to you later in your nursing career. But then also in the background I have an article about latex fruit syndrome and class 2 food allergies. Finally, I think the last of the things we should be looking at right now is the plus sign that's over here on the right-hand edge of the page, right here. That would allow me to open yet another tab, so I could have 3 websites or 4 websites, 5 websites available to me all at once. So there's some of the icons we've just discussed visible on this page for us. Having reviewed those icons that we've looked at so far, I'd like to move on to some more. This next one, though, is not actually an icon, it's more a location on the screen. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the upper left corner of the screen is where a lot of the action is. And quite often, in particular, this is a place that allows you to go back to where you've been before. So for instance, if you are in iTunes listening to music and you pick a particular song and you're listening to that song, there's a button in the upper left corner that allows you to go back to the album or list of songs that you came from. Similarly, in our next example, this allows you to go back out of one document and into your whole list of documents. So this is a prime location, and if you want to go back to where you've been before, you start by looking in the upper left corner. This is not perhaps the best drawing ever. I apologize for my lack of artistic ability, but what I'm trying to convey is a gear icon. These look differently in different apps, but the idea is that when you see a gray or silver gear, this allows you to adjust the settings or preferences in that app itself. And in fact, on the home screen of your iPad, you will see an icon for a Preferences app. And this is set up for your whole iPad. You can go in there and change the brightness of the screen and the Wi-Fi that you're on, anything like that. If you scroll down in that list of preferences, you will see that individual applications also have panels of preferences within there. So you can find this on your home screen for your whole iPad, or in particular applications you can see this used to look at preferences that are commonly adjusted within that app itself. Next, I'd like to talk about this little icon here, which is an I in a circle, lowercase I. This commonly is used to indicate that there's more information available about whatever you're working on now, be that a file or the application itself. So this is an indicator that there's some behind-the-scenes info that you can get access to if you tap on this icon. Next, there's a down arrow, which often indicates download. It may indicate download from the web. For instance, people talk about the cloud. So this says, I would like to take a copy of something that's up there on some other server across the internet, pull it down and store it locally on my iPad because I want to use it even when I don't have Wi-Fi access. That would be one example of what such an icon would indicate in an app. This is a second example of tabs. So the next screenshot we're going to look at has tabs, but they're not displayed across the top of the screen. They run down the right-hand border. They do the same thing as the tabs that we looked at in Safari. So you can tap on one of these tabs and it will jump you to a part of that app that has a particular kind of information in it. Here's our next screenshot where we can test ourselves and see if we can recognize our icons in real life. This is a screenshot from iTunes U. And iTunes U gives you access to different courses. This one is NUR PNR 170 Fundamentals of Nursing from fall of 2012. You will be using one that looks a lot like this with many of the same things in it. Let's take a look around on the screen and see what we recognize. Up in the upper left-hand corner is a library button. That library button takes me back to my whole list of courses that are available in iTunes U. You'll probably have a few of them by the time you're done. What else do we recognize? Oh, here is the Open In button that we talked about earlier. Here is our gear icon that gives us preferences for this app. Next, we can see a download button. So I can play things, say videos or recordings in iTunes U, right across the internet. But if it's something I want to have access to even without Wi-Fi, I download it with this button. Right next to that is our information button that would tell me more about what this choice is. In this case, we're looking at a PowerPoint file, and that button would show me who the author was and when it was uploaded, all that kind of thing. Let's look over to the right some more. Here's our tabs that I indicate. We have info, posts, notes, and then down below is one that says materials. In iTunes U for Holyoke Community College, you will almost always be going straight to the materials tab because these other functions that are indicated by the other tabs fall in the category of things that we usually do on Moodle. So you're going to want to go straight to the materials tab, and there you will get access to files and recordings and apps and links, documents that we want you to have. Here's a screenshot from a third app, again, to review our progress and see what we recognize. This is called iThoughts HD. Because of the way nursing works and because of the way you will be working as a nurse, we will be using mind maps and concept maps at times. So this is an app where we get to construct those mind maps. And if you look closely, you can see that this is one I drew about all the different digital platforms that you all use as nursing students. But for right now, I want to look at the icons on the screen and see what we can spot. There on the left is our bookmark icon. In this case, it allows me to look at all the different maps that I've built in this program. The plus sign would allow me to add another map to my collection. There's a magnifying glass. This is a new one. We'll talk about that in a minute. Our preferences or settings gear, our open in button. Then further to the right is a double arrow. That's another new one. We'll talk about it in a second. Let's look further to the right. Finally, if I go over here, I can see that there's that info I button right there. So I see a lot of stuff that carries over from the other apps that we've looked at so far. Now let's look at a couple of our new ones and then we'll be done. Quite frequently in apps where you do work, you will find yourself wanting to undo something that you just did. On a PC or a Macintosh computer, you might use an Apple Z or a Control Z. In iOS, we don't use such keyboard commands so much, so instead there are arrows. Quite often it will be an arrow that points back to the left. But now in this particular app that we just looked at, there's a couple of choices. In iThoughts HD, that same button allows you to redo something you've just done. So there are arrows in that icon pointing in both directions. Forward and back, as it were. Finally, let's not forget our good friend the magnifying glass. In most cases in iOS on an iPad, a magnifying glass will allow you to search. It will allow you to search for words within a document. It will allow you to search within a set of files to find a particular file. It also occasionally indicates zooming in if you're working in an app that uses a lot of very visual work like a drawing or photo editing application. So sometimes it means zoom in, but most of the time when you see this, it allows you to search. So there's an introduction to the visual language that we use when we navigate our iPads. I hope that's been helpful.